is a continuation of the first video. And first we're going to start by animating our ball. And remember, you could have chosen any ball. You didn't have to choose a baseball. You could have even made your own ball. But make sure that you have that sprite clicked so that we can actually write code for that sprite. And I want you to write the beginning code like we've done on every other program that you guys have written so far. So I want you to pause this program and try to come up with that on your own, because you will eventually have to do stuff on your own. This is the code that you guys should have come up with the way that you've done all of your other ones. You want to clear the background of anything. You want to make sure that your pen is up so that the ball doesn't randomly draw. And you want to make the ball go to the very center. So if you play it, that's what happens. Your ball moves. Oh, I forgot to take the code off of my blue one so it'll stop moving. There we go. So if you've moved your ball anywhere, it'll go right back to the middle whenever it first starts, which is what we want. Then we need to actually animate the ball, make it do stuff. So we're going to get out that cool forever loop that I spoke to you about earlier. So this ball is going to move in a specific way forever. We do need it to move, so we need to move the move over. And then whenever it's on the edge of the wall, we want it to bounce. So now play it, and that's what happens. It moves off of the wall and it bounces, which is pretty cool. But if you notice, it kind of moves down a little bit and then it kind of moves up a little bit, and it's because it's rotating. So what we want to do is turn the rotation off so that it stops doing that weird funky loop that it's doing. So you go back to this info right here, and you want to press this bottom one so that it doesn't rotate and it always stays in that same position. So this is rotate always, this is left and right only, and then this is no rotate at all. We don't need the ball to rotate. So now it strictly goes left, right, left, right. The only other thing is my ball is awfully big, so I want to change its size a little bit, which is right here. And let me try 75. Your ball may be too big and you may want to change its size too. I still don't like 75. That's kind of big for a traditional pong game. Let's try 50. That's almost perfect. All right. So now we're going to make the two paddles move. So we need our left paddle to be on the left-hand side. So we want it centered and right on the wall instead of there. Oh, we also want this beginning pattern for the paddle too. We don't necessarily want the forever loop, but we want the beginner pattern. So all you have to do is to copy this to others. Is you take it and you see how it's got shadow behind it now, which means I'm holding it, and you drag it over to the left paddle. And yes, it did pop back over here, but if you go to the left paddle now, the code's there. We don't need this forever stuff, so that can come off. We also don't really want to change its size yet. I will want to, because those paddles are way too big to be true pong paddles. But let's leave it. Let's see what 50% does. So if you see, it is about the right size that I want it to be, but it's not where I want it to be. Right now it's at 0, 0. So we need to bring it over here. And if you want to know where that is, if you go back to your motions and find the same go to X, Y, it says -333 and then -18. But we actually want it centered. So my Y should be 0 if it's completely centered. But let's go to -133. And then now whenever I hit play, it should end up, that's not really the middle, but close enough. We can bring it down a little bit too. So let's try -10. That's a lot better. So that's about where we want it to be. You want to do the same thing to the right paddle. So we want to take this same thing and put it on our right paddle. Except we don't want the right paddle to start exactly where the blue paddle is. We want it to be on the other side. So instead of -133, let's just try +133, because that's what would move it. Hit play again. That is not where I want it. Let's move you all the way over here and see where that would be. It says 317. So let's do 317 and then play it. There we go. So now the paddles are about the size that I want them to be, and they are in the correct starting position. We also need to make sure that the paddles don't rotate, because that would just look silly while we are playing the game. So click on the eye and set them not to rotate. Both of them need to be that way. Now we're going to set the animation, so move the paddles whenever you use a certain button or whatever on your keyboard. So we're going to work with the left one first, and we want it to always move whenever you do something. It should never decide not to, so it will still be a forever loop. But then we want it to decide if you're actually pressing that button or not. So we're going to use the if inside the forever loop. So it will forever check to see if you're pressing it, but will always work when you're pressing it. Then we're going to move our key pressed on the inside, because it's going to check to see if a certain key is pressed to do something. So we want it to be in there to see if that happens. You can change this to be all the different letters or to be the arrows. On the left one, I used S and W if you're a gamer. Usually A, S, D, W are your directions. So I use W and S to do directions for the left paddle, and then I'll use the arrow buttons to do directions on the right paddle. So I want it to check for W, which is up. It should always move up whenever I press W. So now we're going to make it move a specific way. And we want to always, we do need it to point in a specific direction when that happens. So we want it to point in a direction, and we want it to point up because W is up. So that's the direction we want it to go. But that's just going to make it look in that direction, not necessarily go. So we have to tell it to move also. And then you want to do the exact same thing again for down, which would be S. So if you take this and you right click and duplicate it, put the original back in, put this one right below it, and we're going to change this to S to move down. And then we need to change the direction to down. And then when you make it go, W should make it move up and S should make it move down. It should move whenever you press those keys, and I am pressing the keys. S is down, W is up. And yes, there are issues because it can go all the way off the page that we will deal with in just a minute on my next video, where we work on the rest of the animation. If you want this to be the green one, you can just take it and drag it over there, and then you don't have to recreate it. Go ahead and move this away. But instead of W for up and S for down, you're going to use up arrow and down arrow. So now, oh, and you need to make sure that it starts in the right spot. This is my green one. So we want it to be, it was 319 is where it is right now, and -10. There we go. So green up and down makes it move up and down, and blue W and S makes it move up and down. The green can still go off the screen and the ball doesn't actually react. We will work on that in our next video.